The night he chose to run, the world was unusually quiet. The air was thick, heavy with the kind of silence that makes even the smallest sound feel dangerous, almost like a betrayal. The moon hung low in the sky, a pale, watchful eye casting long, skeletal shadows across the ground, turning familiar shapes into monstrous figures. Every step he took felt like a rebellion against the fear that had been his constant companion for so many years, the very fear that had, in a strange way, kept him alive. The chains were already loose, not because of some act of mercy, not because they were given to him that way, but because he had discovered the quiet power of patience. For weeks, maybe even months, he had worked the metal against a hidden stone in absolute secrecy. It was a slow, grueling process, a nightly ritual performed in near darkness. He would grind the link, bit by bit, feeling the metal weaken under his relentless effort until it no longer owned him. The moment he finally pulled free, the snap of the metal echoed in his chest, a thunderous sound that felt louder to him than it did in the still night air. And then he ran. At first, his legs moved faster than his thoughts, propelled by pure instinct. The world behind him, the one he had known his entire life, began to collapse into memory. He saw flashes of the endless fields, felt the phantom sting of pain, and heard the echoes of orders barked without mercy. That whole world was shrinking, fading into a past he was desperately trying to outrun. Ahead of him was nothing but darkness, an unfamiliar and unforgiving void, but it held a promise. It belonged to no one. It was his to conquer. The forest swallowed him whole. It was a chaotic embrace, a tangle of nature that seemed both an obstacle and a sanctuary. Branches, like skeletal fingers, tore at his clothes and his skin as if trying to pull him back to the life he had just escaped. Roots, like gnarled hands reaching up from the earth, snaked across his path, determined to trip him, to bring him down. His breath burned in his lungs, each inhale a sharp, ragged gasp, a chaotic mix of raw panic and a desperate, burgeoning hope, both fighting for control of his body. Then, somewhere behind him, a sound broke the silence. The dogs began to howl. It was a chilling, predatory sound that traveled easily through the night. Torches flared to life in the distance, small, angry stars that began to bob and weave, chasing him through the trees. Fear caught him then, a different kind of fear. It wasn't the familiar terror of being captured, of the punishment that would surely follow. No, this was a new fear, a more profound and unsettling one, the fear of actually being free. Because freedom, he realized in that heart-pounding moment, meant there would be no one left to blame. There would be no oppressive system to curse, no visible chains to point at as the source of his suffering. There would only be choices, his choices. The weight of that responsibility was almost as heavy as the iron he had just shed. In his panic, his foot caught on a hidden root. He stumbled, falling hard, and the world spun into a dizzying blur of green and black. For a moment, he just lay there, face down in the dirt, the cold mud and warm blood mixing beneath him. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, the barking of the dogs more frantic, the shouts of men clearer. He could almost feel the ground vibrating with their approach. Lying there, breathless and broken, he thought of his mother's whispers. He remembered the secret stories she told him in the dead of night, stories of open skies and announced souls, of a world where a person could walk as far as their legs could carry them without asking permission. He thought of all the lives he had known, the lives that ended in the same fields where they began, lives that ended without ever daring to run. That moment of despair passed as quickly as it came. A new strength, born from those memories, surged through him. He rose again, his body protesting with every movement. He dragged the broken iron shackle behind him, the remnant of his chain clanking against the rocks like a grim warning to the past, a declaration that it would not reclaim him. Pain screamed through every nerve in his body, a symphony of agony. But something deeper, something older and more powerful, answered even louder, a will to not just exist, but to become. He wasn't running to survive anymore. He was running to live. Hours passed. Or maybe it was just one long, endless hour. Time lost its meaning, measured only by the rhythm of his own ragged breaths and the frantic beat of his heart. The dense forest began to thin, the trees standing further apart, allowing more of the pale moonlight to filter through. The sounds behind him, the howling dogs and angry shouts, faded into nothing, swallowed by the distance and the woods. He was alone. When dawn finally arrived, it didn't come with a triumphant burst of celebration or a choir of angels. It came quietly, almost shyly. It brushed the horizon with soft strokes of gray and pink and gold, a gentle light that promised a new day. He collapsed beside a river, his body finally giving out. He was exhausted, shaking uncontrollably, but he was alive. With his last ounce of strength, he worked the broken cuffs from his wrists. They slipped off and fell into the cool, clear water with a quiet splash, sinking quickly into the riverbed, gone from sight.